It's happened again. It's happened again. Arsenal Football Club. It's happened again. Are we surprised? Honestly, how many of us are actually surprised at this? Because I'm not. I'll be honest with you, I'm not surprised. Uncle Pat was right. This is Netflix FC. We're watching the same movie over and over and over again, expecting a different result. So why are we surprised? Why are people surprised at this point? This is the fourth year we are seeing this happen in front of our eyes, right? And also, fans have been labeling me so many different things this season, right? They've been labeling me a hater, for one, of course. They've been saying that I've been delusional, in denial, they've said everything to me under the sun. They told me to give up at one point. I'm forcing it. Stop the gimmick. This is our year. We'll come back to you when we win the title. I need to hear them voices now. I need to hear those voices now. Right? I warned everyone. I told everyone this season what was going to happen. And it wasn't blind faith. I wasn't just, faithful. I could see this happening. Right? I've been saying the same things all season. I've been consistent, regardless of whether Arsenal have been winning or losing. I've been saying the same things about Arsenal. I've been criticizing them in the same way, saying the same criticism towards them from the start up until this point, right? Arsenal all season have not been playing good football, right? They've been relying heavily on set pieces, which we've seen, which has been a useful weapon for them. Their attack hasn't been world class. They're very limited to finding solutions to winning football matches. That's clear. That's evident, right? These are things that we've been seeing with our eyes. But yet I'm being told, that I'm hating, that you're forcing it, that you're in denial. You know what's going to happen. It's inevitable that Arsenal are going to win this league title. Nothing's ever inevitable, bro. Nothing's ever inevitable. Bro, even as a Man United fan, I've seen heartbreak. I've seen our team fumble league titles, right? And you get the sense of why. Sometimes, you can see the nerves and there are cracks, or you see the football that your team's playing and you can almost sort of, predict what's going to happen. And with this Arsenal team, it's been the same story for them every single year, right? Psychology as well is a big thing in football, and psychology is a big thing in sports. And mentally, over the last few, you've seen this team deteriorate, right? You've seen this football club and the players deteriorate right in front of our eyes. Starting from that Carabao Cup final, I said a few weeks ago that prior to the Carabao Cup final, I said that game was going to be important, right? I said on SDS, I said it on my channel, I said that game psychologically is going to make a massive difference as to what happens in that title race, right? If City were to go on to win that, it's a game changer. And that's exactly what's transpired over these last few weeks. Arsenal have been in a poor run of form. They've won one game in the last 6 now. The only game coming in the last minute against Sporting. So, mentally they've fumbled, or they've become, they're failing, you could say, at the worst possible time. At one point they were 9 points ahead with an opportunity to go 12. Now, literally, Man City are 3 points behind them with a game in hand. And the game in hand, well, the game that's coming for them next is midweek against Burnley, a team that's currently sitting in relegation. Right? So you could pretty much expect them to be top of the table by midweek. It's crazy, that, people, don't want to hear the criticism. They don't want to hear it. Right? When things are going well, all they want to hear is praise. All they want to hear is glaze. I heard things about Arteta being the best manager in the world. I heard Arsenal were the best team, and are going to dominate for the next 5 years. Pep Guardiola, he's falling behind. Football's leaving him. The football's moving away from him. Arteta he's ahead of the curve when it comes to football. All of these conversations were had. These are the things I was hearing all season, right? And I always said that this Man City team, yes, they're not the Man City of old, but what they have is individual quality, right? They have players that can make things happen in any given moment. They have different solutions to winning football matches. And what's scary is, obviously, City, for most part of the season, were poor. You know, Pep really didn't figure out his team, didn't really have the right balance. You know, but they still kept themselves within distance. They always still kept themselves, you know, at bay when it came to the title race. You know, now you look at the situation when they lost that tie against Real Madrid in the Champions League. The conversations that were being had about Man City were, you know, they're done for. Pep's, you know, becoming redundant. You know, his football's becoming redundant. He's having to do catch up now. You know, the game's moving away from him, right? Fast forward a few weeks later, they've won the Carabao Cup. They're in the semi-final, you know, for the FA Cup. And now they're literally closing in on another potential title. So they could actually walk away this season with a domestic treble. And Arsenal could potentially, I know they're in the semi-final for the Champions League, but there is still a chance that they could actually leave the season with nothing. Because even that's not guaranteed. That's all up in the air. And the way things are going for them, because right now I feel like Arsenal are doing this. Obviously, Man City are going upwards, right? But even Arsenal mentally, you know, they've become so extremely fragile that you feel like any team they come up against now, from now to the end of the season, they could potentially lose. You know, that Carabao Cup final did some serious mental damage to them. And now we find ourselves in another situation where Arsenal could potentially end the season trophyless. You know, it's crazy. But, you know, of course, and when I have to talk about the game itself, I thought, to be fair as well, to give Arsenal some credit, I thought this game they approached it much better than they did in that Carabao Cup final. I thought first half they did well to contain City. I thought defensively they were a lot more solid. And I think they just made things a lot more harder for Man City in that first half. Obviously, Ryan Cherki, this guy, man, unbelievable, bro. Unbelievable footballer. You know, he's generally bringing back joy when it comes to watching football again. You know, he's the sort of maverick that, you know, you want to tune in for every time you watch football. And he's generally bringing up, you know, that joy back. He's like a street footballer, you know, that just playing with this freedom and no fear and just generally doesn't care. You know, he doesn't care. He just wants to play football his way. And he's been, you know, since the start of this year, just been a revelation for City. You know, he's been almost a difference maker. You could say he's the difference maker right now in this title race. You know, he is the difference. You know, coming back all the way from that Carabao Cup performance as well, like, yeah, he's been sensational. But obviously that was short-lived. It was an unbelievable individual goal from him, you know, solo goal. But that was cut short from Donnarumma, who, very rare moment to be fair, but especially given this season, but that was the worst thing to happen, you know, conceding 37 seconds after just scoring and giving yourself a bit of breather, you know, making yourself relax a bit more. You then concede a goal like that, and that kind of gave Arsenal that hope, you know, that boost, you know, psychologically that they needed. And I was even worried at one point because I thought, you know what, from that era, that could give Arsenal some sort of edge to go on and, you know, push for a result in this game. And, you know, to be fair to Arsenal, they did have some chances, especially in that second half. They had chances. You can't deny Arsenal had chances, you know, to come back into the game. But again, City, I felt like was still the dominant team, especially in that second half at 1-1. They were the dominant side, and then eventually, you know, got their reward through Haaland, who, as of recent, hasn't been great. You know, he has not been great at all as of recent, but today, you know, he showed a lot of fight, he showed a lot of character, you know, especially in his duels with Saliba and Gabriel. He was determined to get something out of this game, and he got his goal, you know, which was well deserved. But I just thought, you know, the performance from City was just, we want to win this game. That was the intention, and that's the difference between Arsenal and Man City, right? Man City approach every game with the intention of winning, regardless of what their situation is at hand. I felt like Arsenal and Arteta, and this has been a theme for them over the last few years, is that they're too risk averse, right? All they care about is not losing or not conceding, you know, rather than dominating teams and going on to score 4, 5, 6 goals, which they've done, of course, but they don't do it as often. And when it comes to moments like this, big games, big moments, you know, crucial games, you know, high stake games, they sort of disappear or they lose or they fumble. Whereas Man City are the opposite. You know, it's almost like they're hungry for these moments. They're hungry for these games. And it showed today. I felt like they were the more hungrier side. You know, a game that was a must-win for Man City, by the way. Arsenal could have walked away with a draw. They could have been a walked away draw, and that would have been a great result for them. You know, but Man City, you know, with the determination to win this game, got their result through what? Through hunger, through desire, determination. And that's why I got to give big praise to Bernardo Silva, who for me was my man of the match, because given, you know, the fact that, you know, he's not at his, I don't feel like he's in his prime anymore, right? I feel like Bernardo Silva, especially, you know, over the last year and a half, I would say that his best days are definitely behind him, right? But as of recent, he's picked up this new deep, lying role, you know, for Man City, and he's been sort of dictating things from that midfield alongside Rodri. But today he was, you know, his defensive work rate was unbelievable. This is a guy who's already announced that he's leaving the club, by the way, right? He's already announced it, and he's won so many trophies with Cities over these past 9 years, and you could still see the determination, the hunger, and the desire to still, you know, put in challenges to chase guy. There was at one point where he was the last man with Havertz. I know it hit Havertz's arm, but the fact that he was the last man and he was hunting down Havertz tells you a lot about this guy, man. And that's the sort of fight and desire that you would want to see from Arsenal. You would want to see from their players. You know, these are players that are, you know, have failed over the past few seasons, and you would expect them to come into this game with the intention of, you know, of we don't care, we are going to walk away with a result today. You know, at one point when it was 1-1, it felt like Arsenal were just kind of trying to cut the time down and were happy to just see out that result, which of course that result would have been great, but it's always about the intention. You know, if you go into a game not wanting to lose, you end up losing, I feel like. You know, if you go with the game with the intention of winning and then you pick up a draw, fair enough. You know, you tried to go for the win. But I felt like Arsenal, once they got to 1-1, I felt like, you know, and it got into the second half, I just felt like as time was going on, they were kind of happy with the result staying how it was. It wasn't until City scored that they now started, you know, bombing forward more. You start seeing the ball getting hit into the box a lot more. And that's the difference between these two sides. That's the difference between Pep and Arteta. I just feel like Arteta's football, you know, is just too risk averse. You know, this is a team that he's invested over $1 billion. And this is the best he could come up with. That attack that he has is the best that he could come up with. You know, I was hearing stuff about how they have the best depth, which they do. I think their depth, you know, is incredible. But their depth at the same time isn't of high quality. I don't think their depth is of the highest of qualities. I heard things like, you know, and you guys know where you heard this from, but I've heard things like, you know, also second team would finish above Man United's first team. Is that so? Is that really so? Because I look at this Arsenal team outside of Saka, and Saka, of course, he hasn't had the greatest of season, right? And he's the poster boy, he's the star boy, he's the main guy for that team. But if he's not playing well, who do you look at in this team and say, okay, this is the guy that's going to carry us and drag us over that line? Who? No one. It's no one. But this is Arteta's team. This is the team that he's built over the last 6 years, to the point where you can't, the question I just asked you now, you can't even answer. It's crazy to me. You know, this is a team that he's invested in. You give any manager this amount of time and this amount of money, you're bound to see some sort of progress, right? Which you have seen with Arsenal. They've become a title challenging team. They're a bit more, they're stronger. They're one of the best teams in Europe when it comes to, you know, performances, and they're not an easy team to beat. However, this is the best you can come up with. When Saka's out, I don't know who to even turn to. It's insane, because I look at that City team. Yes, if Haaland's not firing, then you got Semenyo, you got Doku, you got Cherki, you got even Foden. You know, he's had phases and periods in his career where he's carried. Rodri. There's players where you can actually turn to and be like, okay, this guy can actually help us. Bernardo today, for example, I don't see that with this Arsenal team. And it's crazy to me because, again, it's all about the amount of time you've invested in this team. And by this point, you would have thought that Arsenal have experienced enough. You know, they would have made, you know, from all the errors and the mistakes and experiences they've had from, you know, previous seasons, that this would have been the season that, you know, they can comfortably get over the line. And now it's looking like, you know, Man City are in the driver's seat. Not to say that there's the title race is completely over, but we know what happens once Man City gets into this position with only 5 games to go now. It's insane, you know, and that's my problem. I feel like, you know, Arsenal fans, their biggest issue is that they want glaze, you know, right? There's a difference between praise and glaze. When everything's going well for them and they're winning and stuff, they want people to regurgitate the same nonsense, you know. Arteta's the best manager in the world. On what basis? On what basis is he the best manager in the world? What has he achieved in his career? Apart from that FA Cup that he won on a new manager bounce in his first 6 months with a team that wasn't his, apart from that, what has he actually achieved with this football club for him to be thrown into conversations where guys, you know, are brave enough to say that he's surpassed Pep Guardiola, or he's better than Luis Enrique, or he's better than Hansi Flick? What has he achieved? He's going up against managers that have done trebles, that have won multiple league titles. European trophies. So who is he really? How is he better than these guys? What? Because you scores from set pieces? Is it development? Is it player development that you're measuring it on? What are you measuring it on? Defensive? Well, I don't know. Is it the defense, the goalkeeper? Is that what you're rating it on? How hard it is to score against Arsenal? That makes him the best manager in the world now. I can't fathom it. I don't know how they get thrown into. He gets thrown. Apologies. I don't know how Arteta gets thrown into these conversations. It's wild to me. It's extremely wild, and that's the problem that I have. Is that they throw these crazy statements, when things are going well, but then when they lose, they start telling the truth. Now look, Arsenal fans will tell you our football is boring. They'll tell you the attack isn't good enough. They'll tell you Arteta, some are calling him a fraud. Some are even asking if he doesn't win a title this season to walk away from the job. But we were telling you these things months ago. We were warning you, right? I got cooked for saying earlier in the season, right? It was when Chelsea played Arsenal in the Carabao Cup semi-final, the first leg, where Chelsea fielded a weaker team than Arsenal, and Arsenal won that game 3-2, right? And I tweeted, I said, you know what? If teams became a bit more brave and they actually went at this Arsenal team, they could get results. And I'll show you that tweet. I'm gonna quote tweet at some point, right? If you go on my X account. But I said, you go at this Arsenal team, you can get a result. I got absolutely killed by Arsenal. They were like, come at us then. Come at us. We'll show you. We'll show you. If you come at us, we'll show you. Then we'll pop you off the park. A couple of weeks later, Man United came down to Emirates, right? And we absolutely, outplayed Arsenal, in my opinion. We were the better team. We just kept coming at Arsenal. We didn't care about how many corners they got. We didn't care about how many chances they created. We just kept coming at them, right? And we got a result. We were the first team this season in any competition to beat Arsenal at the Emirates. And how? Because we were brave. Because we came at Arsenal. We didn't, falter. We didn't hide. Once Arsenal went into the lead, we didn't just say, okay, we're going to do damage control like a lot of teams have done. Because a lot of teams have played with fear against Arsenal, in my opinion. They played with fear. Once Arsenal get that first goal, it's almost like they just falter and they just do damage control. We said, nah, you scored fair enough. We're going to keep coming at you, keep coming at you, keep coming at you. We got our reward. But then, even when I felt like we kind of cracked it, a lot of teams didn't follow suit. A lot of teams still had that fear, still had that sort of, they were so cautious when they were playing against Arsenal. And it wasn't until City obviously beat them in this Carabao Cup that now I feel like Arsenal, Arteta's been found out, but Arsenal have been found out. Arsenal and Arteta have both been found out. And since that game now, it's almost like they've laid a blueprint, which I felt like we had already done at the Emirates, Man United. But it's almost like it gave I think there was more eyes, maybe, I don't know, but it gave teams a blueprint as to how to beat Arsenal, and you've seen it over the last few weeks. Arsenal are struggling. Yes, they miss Saka, absolutely. I do agree that losing Saka is a big deal, but teams have kind of found them out. You press them high up the pitch, you stop them, Declan Rice or Zubimendi from collecting the ball, and you force Raya to kick it long, and there you just win the ball back and play up the pitch again, and you keep coming at them, so the blueprint is kind of there for them. I am sweating, I'm not going to lie to you. The guys that, I don't know, I need to do something about these headlights. But, yeah, it's just like the blueprint is there. Bournemouth follows suit. Southampton follows suit. Sporting on a different day maybe could have went through, had they not conceded that last-minute goal in the first leg. And then again today, you see it. But I am worried for this Arsenal team in the sense that I don't know what happens from here to the end of the season. Do they, stay up, keep up the pace and try to make it hard for City, or now do they just falter? Because I could easily see Arsenal losing to Newcastle in the next home game against them in the Premier League. I can generally see that happening. Not because I think Newcastle are better than them, but just because of the mental fragility that they have right now. I could see them, losing to Newcastle or dropping points against Fulham or dropping points away to West Ham. I could see these things happening, So, yeah, it's... I mean, for Arsenal fans, it's tough. I know it's tough, but you gotta hold that. Hold it. I don't feel sorry for them. I'll be real with you. I don't feel sorry. From the way they've been talking all season, I don't feel sorry for them. And they don't learn their lessons. So I'm glad they're suffering, because they wanted me to suffer, right? They wanted me to suffer. They labeled me so many different things, but that's the nature of the game, man. That's the nature of the game. Get the job done, you know. Bottle jobs once again. But yeah, credit to Man City. You know, of course, you know, they're in a position now where they could win a domestic treble, which is another huge achievement for Pep Guardiola. I genuinely believe that, you know, if Pep wins this Premier League title, I think this is his best achievement ever. I think this is his best achievement ever in terms of winning the Premier League. I think this might be his best Premier League title, just because of the fact that the amount of times this guy was counted out, right? You know, at times, you know, City they weren't great. They weren't great. You know, the balance was off. You know, Pep was struggling to find his best 11. But even through all of that adversity and problems that they had, they still managed to find their way into, you know, potentially another Premier League title. You know, guys were writing him off, and look, he could walk away with a domestic treble. It's crazy. It's crazy, but yeah, this is where we're at right now. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. But until next time, peace.